Hey there, we are starting. I'm working on a couple of little things, just trying to get this banner off. Here we go. So, hey, it is May. It is time for our Finance Fireside Chat. And this month, we're going to talk about how lack of clarity impacts your credit, your cash flow, and your calendar. Now, it doesn't make sense that we should be talking about all three as it relates to finance, right? Because credit and cash flow definitely talks about finance and money, but you'd be surprised how your calendar is also impacted or not impacted by lack of clarity. So before we get started, let me tell you who I am. So I'm Audrey Godwin. I am the founder of the Audrey Company, which is a financial training and development platform for women professionals and entrepreneurs for them to feel confident about making financial decisions for the long term and break generational patterns of behavior around money and wealth. And why should you listen to me? You don't really have to, right? Because there's lots of stuff on Google that you can find when it comes to making money, keeping money, growing wealth, investing, all the things. But really, why I'm here is because I actually have 20 years of experience working with individuals that went from low net worth to very high net worth. Worked with companies, some that were looking for investments, some that were just starting from scratch and bootstrapping. And so, really, what I bring to the table is enough experience to be able to help you navigate not just the how to do the funny money and finance task, but to connect your mindset and your motivation. Because what I have learned over my 20 plus years of doing this work is that how we are being, who we are becoming, really does impact how we manage our finances, how we make money, how we keep it, how we spend it, how we invest it. And if we're even thinking forward enough to be able to make sure that our next generation and communities are impacted not just by the assets that we leave them, but also by the behaviors that that we embody that they will want to imitate and emulate. So, little ground rules here is like I'm going to do a little training, but if you have questions, make sure you get them in the chat. I'm happy to answer any question that you have. It doesn't even have to be on the training, but let's get started. So, just recapping, we're going to talk today about how lack of clarity impacts your credit, your cash flow, and your calendar. So, May is a month where it's the beginning of transitions. My daughter just went to the Washington State University graduation so she could celebrate her friends that were graduating. That's a big transition for them, big transition for the parents and the families as those young people start on their journey, their next chapter of their life. We have decision days coming up. So now we have parents and young adults getting ready for how they're going to make their transition to college. We have school years starting to end, and depending on where you are in the US, in the country, May is the beginning of end of the school year. You could be transitioning to a new job. You could be transitioning back to the office. So when I talk about having lack of clarity and it impacting your credit, cash flow, and your calendar, there are all kinds of ways that those three can be impacted. And what we really want to do is get super clear. And I don't mean like crystal clear down to all the minute tasks. But you really do want to have an idea of where you want to be, who you want to be on the other side of a change. So let's take, for instance, parents of a college graduate. As your college graduate comes home and is looking for a new job, if they don't already have a job lined up, what are those transitions going to look like over the next 60, 90 days, right? How are you going to budget for them? Are you still going to provide finances for them? Are you going to help them set up their ability to get a credit card or make sure that their credit score is good for them to be able to get a credit card and or secure their first apartment. The other thing that we want to think about in these transitions is, the transition, student debt, student loans have a lot of been getting a lot of play in the news. And so we want to make sure that our college graduates know how long their deferral period is before they have to start paying back their student loans, if in fact they have it. And if you're a parent of a graduate and want to help them out with those payments as they're getting their legs underneath them, living their own life in their apartment with their new job, you have to adjust your budget as well to make sure that how you want them to live out their first few months or year after college is something that you both can agree on. And what it does is allows your student or your newly graduated young adult to really establish themselves, establish their credit, establish some spending habits that are in alignment with what they envision for their new life outside of college. So when we're talking about having clarity, I'm really talking about how are we going to get to where we are at the other side of whatever 90 days transition. It could be 90 days on the calendar. It could be preparing for, graduate studies. It could be preparing for classes over the summer, any kind of subjects like math camp or science camp, depending on what the COVID protocols are. All the additional things that are going to happen between May and September, now's the time to start thinking about it. So let's talk about the basics of, setting a vision. It doesn't have to be this big, we're going to have, $1 million in the bank and we're going to do all the savings. It could just be, how are we going to get through the summer? And we have holidays, right? So the Memorial Day holiday, which technically kicks off summer, is at the end of this month. There are more graduations that are happening in June. And then you have in the US, Independence Day. And so you have all of these activities that are going to start happening. And so you really want to think about how you want to be. Do you want your family gatherings to have less stress? Do you want to have more margin in your week? How are you going to handle the kids being home from school? How is your work going to be if you're transitioning back to the office a certain number of days a week? How is, are you driving? Are you taking public transportation? Are you Ubering? A lot of those different considerations will affect your cash flow. So you really want to be thinking about how are the next 90 days going to fall out for you as you're putting together sort of a game plan on how to navigate all the people in your household and the changes that are happening over the next 90 days. The other thing that I want to talk about is, values, right? So, I don't know about you, but our family, we take a look at our values once a year, individually and as a family. I also do that for my company. Annually, we check, our values, because our core values are the lens that we make all of our decisions through. So whether we're going to do new training in our companies, if we're going to, take a new job, the values that are most important are the things that are going to be the lens that we look through. Let's say you're looking, and the real estate market is very interesting right now, but let's say you're looking for a new place to live, whether it's being a renter or purchasing a home. Now you have to really focus on what is it that you need to do for your credit to be able to get the best interest rate for your loan if you're buying, or to make sure that you don't have to put additional deposits down if you're going to become a renter. Now, if you're looking to move in the next, couple of months, you really have to get clear about your credit score and the things that you need to do. And I would challenge you that if you think about your values, that you don't want to have to go through this exercise of cleaning up your credit every time you need to make a major purchase, whether it's a house or a new car or maybe an RV or getting insurance, because our credit affects our renter's insurance, our mortgage insurance, our homeowner's insurance, our car insurance. So our credit score affect all of those things. So as you think about cleaning up your credit because you're getting ready to make major purchases, you also want to think about making sure that the values that are important to you, you're actually living out. So that when you do this quick cleanup of your credit, that you don't go back to old behaviors and get yourself back in a credit bind. So you get your credit score up to a certain level, and then you get all the you get that house, you get that, the apartment or the place you're going to rent, or you get a decent rate on your mortgage, or you get a decent rate on your car loan. You want to make sure that you also establish new habits so that your credit score is not dipping just because you went through this big cleanup and then you secured what you needed to, and then you went back to spending how you used to spend. One of the things that I know to be true is that when we're super clear about cleaning our credit and wanting it to stay clean, it definitely requires us to look at our spending, understand why we were spending what we were spending, and see if we can start making some changes in how we're spending based on what we value and what's most important to us. And I know what people are saying, hey, it's hard to make ends meet because of the fact that, people have had job changes, the remote working, inflation is hitting. And so our dollars are not, our money is not going as far as it used to. What I would tell you is it's still a good time to take a moment, look at your spending, see where you can cut or substitute some things. And I'm not saying that all of a sudden you have to make this great, huge sacrifice. What I'm saying is, like, you do need to be mindful of where your money is going so that you don't wonder where it went at the end of the week or at the end of the month. Or if you're getting ready to purchase a house, you make these inadvertent spends that your mortgage banker is telling you, please don't make any major purchases because it's going to impact your credit. But you haven't really evaluated your spending habits and why you spend what you spend. So now you're looking at having to delay your purchase, or now you're at a higher interest rate because you have changed your credit score just a little bit. So today, we're just going to talk about, continue to talk about vision and values, because one of the things that we're talking about, when we're talking about credit and cash flow and our calendar, is that the three are intertwined. Once we get really clear about what our values are, then we can look at our calendar and say, hey, what are we spending our time on? If I say that, my health is important and I'm not doing anything to, improve my health, and it doesn't have to be something, like 3 hours at the gym or a gym membership. It might be if I can't work out in my home, but we want to make sure that those values are translating to our calendar so that we're spending time on the things that we say are most important: our health, our family, our work, whether you're working for someone else or you're working in your own business. Those things need to be on your calendar. When we're talking about credit, so we've talked about personal credit, we've talked about college students who have credit cards or getting credit cards. We want to make sure they learn how to manage their credit usage so that they're always in the high 700s, 800s for their credit score, so that they can get their good, get a good apartment, they can get decent rates on their auto insurance. There are many things that get affected by credit score. And so we want to make sure that if you're not already looking at how you're spending your money or why you're spending what you're spending, now's a good time to do that, because that will impact your credit score. Because if we're constantly putting things on our credit card, but always doing a long-term, if we're looking at a long-term purchase. So let's say we put, we're used to just putting things on a credit card, but we're not paying off the balance. If it's more than 30% of your credit limit, then it's going to affect your credit score. And so I want to make sure that when we're talking about credit, that we're looking at our habits, we're looking at especially for those of us who, have everything delivered, that we're going back to old habits of, I'll talk about me. Used to do groceries once a week. In the pandemic, then it was like, oh, I can get it delivered. And so all of a sudden, every couple of days, I'm having things delivered or doing it more, bigger spends because, I can get free delivery, as opposed to what I've gone back to now is, what do I really need for the week? Do the meal planning. And so I'm back to my normal food budget spend. And yeah, you're right. It's one of those things that we definitely want to make sure that, that we're thinking about our motivations for spending, and that we're thinking about credit, because if we're changing jobs or we need to find a new place to live, they're going to look for our credit score. And so we might think that all we need is a deposit and first month's rent. And really what ends up happening is that we end up having to put out a bigger deposit because of the fact that our credit score dropped because we weren't paying attention to the auto loan and the number of credit cards that get us to over 30% of credit card usage. So those things are important. And I'm not saying that we need to be chained to it, but what I know to be true for the clients that I've worked with is that we tend to look at just what's going out and hope we can make ends meet, as opposed to putting a budget together that really embraces our values and it embraces our schedule. Because there's nothing worse than saying, hey, I'm going to change this habit, and then I can't change anything in my calendar to make sure that that I can actually execute and implement those things that I say that are most important. So I'm not noticing any questions. So what I'm going to say is that if you are looking to get a change in or get a little bit more clarity with your vision and your values and how it ties to your credit and cash flow and your calendar, you could definitely book time for a Start Here, Get Clear strategy session. So we can, at the very least, get some idea of how you can make forward progress, more positive progress in getting a healthier, positive cash flow to help raise your credit score, and to make sure you have enough time in your calendar to be able to make all these changes and not be so worried about what's happening in the economy, what's happening with inflation, because you're committed to doing what's most important to you and your family as you move forward in becoming, gaining mastery in your finances. So just a quick recap is, lack of clarity means that your credit, your cash flow, and your calendar are going to be impacted in ways that you recognize, and sometimes in ways that you hadn't even thought of. So it's a good time in the month of May to start thinking about all the things that are coming up in the next 90 days. Could be end of school year, job change, job going back to the office, could be graduations. We have holidays coming up, preparation for summer. Those are all the things you want to think about, and think about your spending and how you're going to be prepared for all of these events that might require extra cash flow. Or if you're going to use your credit cards, think about how you're going to pay down those credit cards so it doesn't impact your credit score in such a way that if you're looking to buy a new car or to get change your auto insurance, or to look at a new place to live, that it doesn't create tighter cash flow restrictions or forces you to put out your plans further because of the fact that you have these transitions coming up in the next few months. So if you want to learn more about how the Audrey Company can help you become a better steward, a better financial master for your finances and your credit and your cash flow, check us out at theaudreycompany.com and schedule your Start Here, Get Clear strategy session. And we'll be talking to you next month for our Fearless Financial Mastery Finance Fireside Chat.